this application, we visit the city as it appeared around the year 215 of our era, which can be considered the peak of its ancient development. A bird's-eye view gives us our first look at Baalbek and its hinterland. We are hovering above the fertile Bekaa Valley that stretches over 120 kilometers between the two mountain ranges of Lebanon and Anti-Lebanon. Below, we see the town of Baalbek, a place that has been inhabited for over 10,000 years. In Roman times, it was called Heliopolis, the city of the sun. While Baalbek today has almost 100,000 inhabitants, it was much smaller in Roman antiquity. The most famous landmark of ancient Heliopolis was the great sanctuary of Jupiter, who here was called appropriately enough Jupiter Optimus Maximus Heliopolitanus, that is to say, Heliopolitan Jupiter, the best and the greatest. The complex belongs to a series of Roman constructions whose remains are sprinkled throughout the city. Baalbek lies on the edge of the Bekaa Valley, at the point where it reaches its greatest height and where its watershed lies. Nearby are the sources of two rivers, the Litani, which was called Leontes in antiquity and flows south, and the Orontes, which grows to considerable size farther north in Syria. The Bekaa Valley has always been very fertile, and the two rivers are responsible for this fertility. The name Baalbek actually means Lord of the Source. Water, as a guarantee of fertility, was therefore closely linked with the city and certainly a reason for the sanctuary's construction here. This impressive complex alone put Heliopolis on the map. Without it, Baalbek would probably have been and remained a small, insignificant village. But the sanctuary was more than the center of Heliopolis. Over 300 meters long, it is one of the most imposing complexes of ancient architecture, not only in the Middle East, but in the entire Roman Empire. The sanctuary of Jupiter, of whose enormous temple 6 columns still remain standing, is surrounded by other structures. These include the so-called Temple of Bacchus, one of the best-preserved temples in the ancient world, a much smaller circular temple, and near it, a small temple rectangular in plan. We will visit all these sacred places on this tour. Besides these and other temples, we know of column streets, a thermal bath, a theater, a large banquet building, and much, much more. We know much less about the residential buildings of the Roman town. We are looking at the sanctuary from the west. This means that we see it from the rear, looking not only in the direction of the rising sun, but also in the direction of one of the springs that are so important for Baalbek. Sun and water equal fertility, and that is what the cult of Jupiter from Heliopolis was basically about. Look at this temple. 54 columns, each almost 20 meters tall, support the temple's roof, 10 each at the front and at the back, and 19 along each of the long sides. From here, its most recognizable feature is the famous so-called trilithon, gigantic stones quarried locally to construct the temple podium. You can find out more about the trilithon at stop 36 on the tour. The building material of choice here was the limestone extracted from the quarries in the area. Not until Roman times were these quarries exploited on a large scale. Probably the stone material was delivered from this direction, stored temporarily and prepared for backfilling. Perhaps the workshops of the blacksmith or other suppliers were also here. To the right of the large temple of Jupiter stands the small temple, the so-called Temple of Bacchus. Don't be deceived when we call it small. It is bigger than many other Roman temples elsewhere. Only in Baalbek could it be considered the small temple. It is not certain to which god it was dedicated. Some indications speak for Bacchus, whom the Romans also called Liber Pater. The most that can be said for sure is that it is at least 100 years younger than its great neighbor, the Temple of Jupiter. We will take a closer look at both temples at other stops on this tour. To begin your tour, please click on the map icon on the upper right-hand part of your virtual tablet. This will open a map. You are free to click on any blue circle on the map, and you will be teleported to see the feature you have selected. Let us land now in front of the sanctuary so that we can explore it. Welcome to Baalbek, or rather to Heliopolis, as the city was called in Greek and Roman times. With its sanctuary of Jupiter, this city hosted one of the most magnificent temples in the entire Roman Empire. We have entered the city and now have arrived in its heart. Here, in the center of Heliopolis, we stand in front of the great sanctuary of Jupiter Optimus Maximus Heliopolitanus. This means Heliopolitan Jupiter, the best and the greatest. The title is an allusion to the god who presided atop the Capitoline Hill in the heart of the imperial capital at Rome. There he was called simply Jupiter, the best and the greatest. Let us have a